many of you guys like roller coasters? Any roller coaster fans? Yes, I love roller coasters. I had the opportunity of taking my daughters, and I really wanted them to enjoy roller coasters. And so we went to Disneyland, and I'm going, man, it's time for them to go on Matterhorn. It's time for them to go on Space Mountain. Like, it's time for them to do this. They're 6 years old and 4 years old, and I'm like, we're doing this. And I'm super excited. And as we got there, they were really nervous. And then I'm like, well, why are you guys like so nervous about this? It's going to be fun. They're like, no, because I have friends in my class, I have friends at school that have told me that roller coasters are really, really scary. Like, that's what they've told me, and I was like, they're not though, they're fun. And they're like, no, they said they're scary, so I'm already scared going into this. Right? It didn't help that when they were like really young, we put them on like one of those really janky roller coasters, like at the fair, where you're like, please don't fall apart, right? Like, please, like, it was like a little one, and they were kind of like a little bit scarred from that past experience. So they had people telling them something about roller coasters, and then they had this past experience, and those were two major barriers that they had to get over to realize that roller coasters are fun. Like, they're not what they thought they were. And we finally got them onto Space Mountain, and we got them onto the Matterhorn, right? And when they got off, they're like, dude, we just got to do this all day. And we just went in line and rode those rides. They loved them. Right, but the problem was that they had a misconception about what roller coasters were because they'd heard something from somebody else. See, I feel like when it comes to church, that's a lot of people. A lot of people have a misconception about what actually is going to happen in a church because they've heard from someone else, they've heard a rumor, they believe a stereotype, or they've had a bad past experience themselves. And so when it comes to church, they're going, I don't really know if I want to be a part of this because I've heard some things. And maybe many of you in here, you've heard some things, and you're going, I don't know if this church is a place that I can actually trust, because churches usually have a lot of negative things that come with them, right? Have a lot of things that come with them, and we want to work through those things, and we want to change what that stereotype is. And so over the next few weeks, I'm super excited about this series. I'm probably most excited about this series as I am of any series we'll do all year. It's called We Are. Simply, we are, because I want to clear up any of the misconceptions that you might have or that your friends have about what this whole church thing is about, why we exist, what we're about. Because people have objections, they have questions, they have concerns, and if our job, which we talked about last week, if our job is to reach them and invite them, we're going to encounter these questions, and we're going to encounter these objections that people have to church. And so we want to talk about how we can create an environment that is not those things, but instead it's what Jesus said. We don't want anything else to shape the culture of this ministry besides what Jesus has said. And one of the things I hear so often, probably the most, and you might have thought this before, or you've at least heard this, people will say this: the church is just so judgmental. Right? The church is just too judgmental. Like, I feel like the church is just pointing fingers at me, just wants to tell me everything I've done wrong, wants to like pretend like they're better than me, and I can't come in and actually really be real because they're just going to judge me for who I am. People say that all the time. That's one of the most common complaints about church. And when I think about that, I'm like, man, is that just normal for church? Because if it is, like, that doesn't sound like a place that I want to be. Like, I don't want to go somewhere that's just going to judge me the whole time. Is that just normal for church, though? Is that just how it's supposed to be, that the church is judgmental? Because in many, many cases it is. That's how it is. So is that right? Is that how it is supposed to be? Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to look at what Jesus said and did, and what we can learn from about creating that environment here from him. Not taking cues from what culture says, not taking cues from what the stereotype is, not taking cues from your grandma's church down the street that like just does what they do and you go, well, that's what church is. Not taking cues from anyone besides Jesus. And we're going to look at what he says. Okay, so first we start with Jesus. Jesus was a real person that walked the earth 2,000 years ago. He really existed, he really lived, and he went around teaching, and crowds started to form. Jesus would do miracles. Jesus would do crazy things, and people were like, man, I got to see this. One time he decided he was going to heal this blind guy, but he wasn't going to do it like normally heal him. He decided he was going to hawk a loogie on the ground, and he's just, right, picks up, makes some mud, sticks it on the guy's face, and dude gets healed. Like, how cool is that? So people started hearing these things, and they're like, we want to check this out. So crowds would form when Jesus would talk. So then we pick up the story in John 8, verse 1. It says this: Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back at the temple. He was back doing what he does, and a crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. This was a normal day for Jesus. Crowds showed up when Jesus taught. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything was great. He was going around teaching, and then this is where it gets a little weird. This is where out of the ordinary happens. Verse 3, as he was speaking, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery, and they put her in front of the crowd. This lady had literally been caught sleeping with someone that was not her husband. She had been caught in the act, and she had been thrown in this square in front of everyone. Okay, so think about this. As Jesus teaches, crowds form. So it was a very, very public place. So these people brought her to a place of embarrassment, right, of major embarrassment, and they threw her in front of the crowd. See, and I think a lot of times that's what religion does. A lot of time religion likes to call people out, likes to embarrass, likes to put them in a spot where it makes them look better. Just like these people, religious people did. They threw her there in the middle and were like, look what she did. In the middle of the whole crowd, they're like, look what she did. The focus is on her because religious people like to point fingers in order to take the blame off themselves. And a lot of times churches, that's what they do, is they call people out in a very public way and try to point out their flaws. But realize this, in this scenario, which is already kind of awkward because they literally caught her and they're pointing her out for a sin that we like to keep private, right? They're pointing her out because she slept with somebody's husband or somebody who wasn't her husband in the middle of the town square, and they're like, look, it's already super awkward in this, but I don't think they really cared about justice in this. I don't think they cared about justice at all because they only called out one person. Like, we've all taken health class. Like, we've all taken biology. We know that it takes two, right? Like, it's not possible to have sex without two people, right? And so they threw her in the middle of there, but where's the dude? Like, where's the other person involved in this? They literally just threw one person. And so I'm saying they're not concerned about justice in this situation. They're concerned about calling out. They're concerned about pointing the finger. They're concerned about something else. Right? You ever gotten in trouble before for doing something when everybody did it, but you're the one person that got in trouble? Right? Maybe on a sports team or something, and like everybody did it and you're the one running for it. I remember I was in high school and we were in anatomy class. It was boring to the point of tears. Like, I couldn't go on any farther. And we had this little bouncy ball, the kind you like get out of a vending machine, you know. And so we decided we were going to take this bouncy ball, and every time the teacher turned her back to write on the board, we were just going to chuck it somewhere in the room. So it was just like it was literally just going everywhere. And whoever it got closest to when it was like slowing down, they would just grab it and hold on to it until the next time the teacher turned around. So it was like going everywhere. Like, I don't know how the teacher didn't realize this too, because it was making some noise. Like when it was hitting things, right? And we would all just be like hitting our desk randomly when she turned around. So we're like, oh yeah, sorry. We just like all had to move papers at the same time. Like, I don't know what her deal was, but one time the ball is like, pew, 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 and it lands on this cabinet in the side of the room, like right closest to my desk. So literally every eye in the classroom is looking right at me, and they're like, bro, help us out. You got to get the ball, right? Like, you got to keep this going. And I'm like, okay, all right. So she turns her back. I go and I'm like looking for it, but it's on top of this cabinet. And it had been up for a while, so I'm like, I got to sit back down because the teacher's going to turn around. She turns around, and then she goes back to write on the board. And it had been a long time, and everyone in the class is like, come on. I'm like, okay. So I get over there. I'm jumping as high as I can to see on top of this cabinet. Lady turns around in the middle of a jump. Like, I'm in the air, right? And I'm like, oh, crap, right? As soon as I land, she's like, what are you doing? The only thing I could think of, I was like, oh, I got a cramp. I was just working it out. Like, I'm good. It's all good, right? I sit down, and she goes, no, go to the office. Like, what? I just had a cramp. Like, what are you doing? She's like, no, you need to. And I'm like, why? She's like, you've been the one disrupting my entire class. It's you. Go to the office. I'm like, it was literally everyone, right? Like, right, you ever been in that spot? That's this lady. She's thrown in the middle of this. She wasn't the only one involved, but she's the one called out in front of everyone. They only called her out. But check this out. Even in order to keep the law, which is what they said they were doing, in order to keep the law, the Mosaic law says that two people have to be witness to the breaking of this law. Let this sink in, right? They caught her in the act of adultery, which means two people were like spying on her, setting up this encounter. And here's the crazy thing. It might have even been the person that she was sleeping with was in on it too, to set her up for this. Because they never called that person out. That person had nothing to do with it. They set up this situation to literally catch her in the act. To catch her in that. Basically, in order for that to happen, it would have had to been a setup. And I think a lot of times that's what religious people do. In the church today, they have a setup, they have a set of questions, they have a set of morality, they have a set of things that they project on people outside of the church, and it's almost a setup question. Do you think the same way? Do you act the same way? Do you do the same things? And if you don't, we will then point our fingers at you. We will then point our fingers at you. Nothing is different in the way that they do that. We want them to think the same way, and then if they don't, we punish them, we condemn them before they even come through the doors of the church. Before they're even a part of this, we point fingers at people that aren't a part of what we're doing. Exactly like these religious people do. It's kind of like this, and I think this might resonate with a lot of you. I found this video clip that I think explains kind of what religious people like to do a lot. Check this out.
We have to talk to you.
Is butter a carb?
Yes. Gina, you're wearing sweatpants. It's Monday.
So?
So that's against the rules, and you can't sit with us.
Whatever. Those rules aren't real.
They were real that day I wore a vest.
Because that vest was disgusting.
You can't sit with us!
See, that's what church does, dude. They come up with these rules that they project on other people that they made up themselves, the standard, and when people don't meet that standard, then they tell them, you can't sit with us, you can't be a part of this, you can't be a part of what we're doing here. And so the religious people, they have these rules attitude, and even back then, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get Jesus to fit into their rules. So they're trying to test Jesus in this. They're going, okay, is Jesus going to play along with this? So they threw this woman in the middle of everything. And then in John 8, verse 4, it says, Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Right? Now some of you are like, okay, I know what getting stoned means, but what are they talking about here? All right? They were literally talking about grabbing stones, giant rocks, throwing them at this woman repeatedly until she died. Like over and over again, getting hit with massive rocks until she died. And they're kind of setting Jesus up here because they're going, okay, wait a second, Jesus, here's your two options, dude. You either say, yes, she needs to be stoned right now. Everybody grab a rock, throw it at her, and kill her. And you look like this monster that's saying, go for it. Or, what are you going to do, Jesus? Are you going to say, no, she just gets to go. I don't care about the law. I don't care about what Moses set in place. I don't care about any of that stuff. And then he looks like a guy who just doesn't care about the law. They're like, Jesus, it's really cut and dry. One of the two, what are you going to do? They challenge him in this moment. And Jesus does some awesome Jesus stuff here. And he goes, wait a second, you're giving me two options? I pick option 3. Like, we didn't give you that option. Jesus is like, I know, I'm Jesus, right? And so Jesus says this in verse 6. They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. Like, dude starts playing in the sand in the middle of this situation. Jesus, why are you making a sandcastle? This is weird. They kept demanding an answer, and so he stood up again and he said, all right, but let the one who's never sinned throw the first stone. Go for it. You want to throw stones? Go for it. But if you've never sinned, you can go first. And then he stooped down again and he wrote in the dust. Here he goes, playing in the sand again. Okay, Jesus kind of ignores what they're doing. He's like, I'm just going to start playing in the sand here. See, and scholars debate that. They're like, what was he writing? Like, it doesn't say in here what he was writing. And so some people came up with these theories of like, here's probably what Jesus is writing. And I agree with them. Here's what I think Jesus is writing here. I think Jesus is writing the sins of the people that are standing around. All those people that are standing around that are like, well, get her. I want to throw a stone at her. I want to kill her. Like, she's messed up. And Jesus is like, all right, if you've never sinned, go first. But he's like writing their sins. He's writing the things that no one else knew. He's writing all the stuff, and here's why, because all of us have sinned. Nobody is perfect. Literally every person in this room, in this world, everywhere has messed up. There is nobody that is perfect. Nobody has the right to point fingers at an outsider. Nobody has the right to go, oh, well, you can't come here because you've messed up. Nobody has a right to say, well, you can't sit with us because of what you've done. Nobody has a right to say, why is that person here? I know what they're like at school. They can't be here. Nobody has a right to do that. When the accusers heard this, verse 9, they slipped away one by one. beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. So they started realizing what Jesus was doing one by one. And it started with the oldest. Why? Because they're smarter. They get it, right? They get it. They're going, oh crap, he wins. Right? Anyone ever played chess before? I'm the worst chess player in the world. And usually here's what happens when I'm playing chess. I'll get to a spot where I'm like thinking super hard, right? Like concentration is setting in. Like you can see it on my face. We're not sure if it's constipation or concentration, but I'm like, it's that look, and I'm like playing. And people are like, well, the person I'm playing is like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to win this game. And they're like, bro, it was checkmate like 2 minutes ago. Right? Like, what are you doing? There's literally no way to win. Jesus literally just checkmated him. He wrote it on the ground and just checkmate. And the oldest people are like, he's got us. Dang. The younger ones are still like, why aren't we throwing rocks? Like, what's happening? Like, dude, it's checkmate. It's checkmate. And they started leaving. In verse 10, then Jesus stood up again and he said to the woman, he says, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, all right, neither do I. Go and sin no more. See, Jesus didn't say, yes, go ahead and sin. Just keep sinning more. Do more sins. Right? Jesus didn't say, all right, this is great. Go ahead and just live the way that you are and the way that you want and do that. That's wonderful. See, that's not what the church should say either. There are standards. There are things that people need to realize. But Jesus does show us something that's super important. Jesus shows us how we need to act. Jesus shows us something that goes against what religion says oftentimes. Jesus shows love. We are loving. We're going to talk about 4 words over the next 4 weeks. You want your word for the day? It's we are loving. That's it. We are going to be loving. And a lot of us right away, that word is messed up in our culture because we think romantic love, right? We think romantic love. You guys are in high school by now. You've probably been in love 4 or 5 times by now. You found the one like 3 times. You're like, I'm good. I know all about love. I get it, right? I get it. But first of all, we think of love as romance, but this is actually something way more powerful than that. Love is a commandment to us. Jesus said, go and love one another. And the word that he uses when he says love is agapo. And agapo is a verb, which is important. It's not something that just happens, okay? First of all, it doesn't just happen. It's something that you do. A verb is an action word. But it's referring to brotherly love. Right? Anyone ever had somebody in their life do something for them that they didn't deserve? That they just like, why are you treating me with this love? Why are you treating me with this care? Why are you doing this to me? That feeling that you get when you know that even though you're a mess and even though that you don't deserve this, somebody still shows that love for you, shows that care for you. See, we want to be a safe place. We don't want to be judging. We don't want to be pointing our fingers. What that means is that in this group, in this place right here, we want this to be a place where you can invite your friends who are going through darkness, man. They're going through, maybe their parents are in the middle of a divorce. Maybe their parents aren't there yet, but they have to listen to them fight every single day. Right? Maybe there's somebody who've gone through something difficult and they got a family member who's dying and they're going, how do I even deal with this? And when they walk in these doors, this needs to be a place where they feel safe, where they feel love, where we are loving to the point where they come in and they go, I can finally let my guard down because I'm in a safe place. This isn't a place where I'm going to get a finger pointed at me and told that I'm wrong and told that what I'm doing isn't okay and told all these other things that they're fearful. This is a place where they can come and it can be safe. They're not going to get gossiped about. They're not going to get made fun of. Right? You're going to put down that preconceived thought that you have about someone based on what they're wearing or what they look like, or maybe because you already know them from school. And when you see them come through the door, you think, oh gosh, what are they doing here? Why are they trying to come here? I know who they are at school. We're not going to do that. We're not going to judge people. We're never going to kick somebody out of here based on what they've done. There's no one in here who's done something bad enough for us to say, you can't be a part of this. Because none of us in here are perfect. We are going to be loving. Being loving also means that if our job is to reach those around us, if you're going to be loving out in our community, don't prejudge an invite. And here's what I mean. If you're going to invite a friend, a lot of you have already decided in your mind whether or not they're good enough to come. And you've thought to yourself, well, I would ask them. My friend's just not really religious. Well, I would ask them, but you don't know what they've done. Like, they're really not church people. Well, I would ask them, but you've already prejudged an invite. Do you understand how unloving that is? To judge what somebody is going to say to your invite before you even ask, and you decide, I'm not even going to ask. That's so unloving, because if you really love someone, you want them to know about Jesus. Your job is to tell people about Jesus, to invite them to come and check it out, to be here, to be a part of this. And if you've prejudged that already, that's so unloving. See, here's the thing. You guys are the church. We can facilitate this meeting. We can put an awesome band up there, and Paulo can play songs that you guys are going to get pumped up to, right? We're going to dance to that last song. It's going to happen, right? I can put together a message. We can play a game. We can facilitate that. But what it boils down to is you guys are the church. The church is not a service. The church is not a place. The church is you. And so if we are going to be the hands and feet of Jesus, if we're going to make this the most loving place in the East Bay, it starts with you. It starts with you creating that environment. And that's what we're going to be about this entire year. This word loving, we're going to put it all over things. We're going to put giant posters up that have these 4 words, and we're going to make it our mission to be the church that's not the stereotype, that's not the judging, that's not all the things that you have in your mind, the preconceived notion, but to be something opposite, to be something that Jesus decided. Not us, but Jesus. See, I believe that you guys can do it. I believe in you guys. If I ever get to a point where I don't believe in you guys and that you can do it, I won't stand up here. I'm not the person that's going to lie. I'm not the person that's going to water things down. I'm not the person that's not going to tell you exactly what these verses mean or talk about the difficult things. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be real. And one of the things that I honestly, truly believe deep down inside is that you are so worth it. You guys are, I have so much confidence in you to change the church, the area, everything because of what you guys are going to do. I believe in you guys so much. You guys can love fiercely and you can make this place amazing. Like, it's not a secret that stereotype exists, that the church is judgmental. Okay, but Jesus intended something totally different. Jesus showed something totally different. We're not here to point fingers. We're here to love. And this place here is going to be a safe, loving place for you, for your friends, for the people who've never come to church before and they have a preconceived idea. When they walk through these doors, I want them to go, man, this is where I want to be. Let's pray. God, we just thank you so much that you don't just judge us and allow us to be stoned or to be killed for the things that we've done, God, but instead you offer us your grace and you offer us your mercy and you offer us your love, God. And Lord, I just thank you for that. But God, I pray that you would help us to become that to our community, to this church, in this room, that we would become that loving, safe environment for people that desperately need to know there is that it exists, that they don't have to do it on their own. Lord, I pray for these students that you would help them to do that, help them to create that environment, help them to embody that. We understand that it's not easy, but it's a constant reminder. And God, I pray that you would remind them, that you would be with them. I just love you, God. I thank you, praise you. And as we worship you right now, we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.